Well, I guess I could just do the start.
Yeah.
Okay. Just okay. So this song is called "The Flow of Life." I jumped on this ride, the ride to undo pride. Oh, it seemed pretty wild to be reborn as a child. Life just moves when there are no rules. It is all in God's hands. In this flow I begin to grow into who I truly am. I took the chance, knowing nothing in advance. Fell down into a deep dark hole. It was gross, falling on my nose. Life just moves when there are no rules. It is all in God's hands. In this flow I begin to grow into who I truly am. I finally saw the game, the silly game of shame. I laughed so much that I got in touch with the joy and the flow of life. I pulled away from the role I did play. Now it is all in God's hands. All I know is life is a flow. It is all in God's hands.
another one, or?
Yeah, well, I could. Yeah. Maybe I'll sing one that you probably know, close to you. You can sing with me if you want. I would do anything to touch the sky. I would do anything to learn to fly. You are my goal. Oh, what I am longing for. I am yours, forever yours. You are my goal, you're all I'm aiming for. You are my only goal, my purpose, my one choice. Trusting in you is all I want to do. My trust is in you. I'm longing to be close to you, close to you. Ooh, close to you, close to you. Ooh, longing to be close to you, close to you. Close to you. I am down on my knees and I pray to be in your arms, and you are holding me. I feel your love. Oh, it's all I am longing for. I am yours, forever yours. You are my goal, you're all I'm aiming for. You are my only goal, my purpose, my one choice. Trusting in you is all I want to do. My trust is in you. I'm longing to be close to you, close to you. Ooh, close to you, close to you. Ooh, longing to be close to you. All that I give to me. All that I give will set me free. Take my hand and take my life. Show me the way to paradise. To paradise. I would do anything to touch the sky. I would do anything learn to fly. You are my goal. Oh, what I am longing for. I am yours, forever yours. You are my goal, you're all I'm aiming for. You are my only goal, my purpose, my one choice. Trusting in you is all I want to do. My trust is in you. I'm longing to be close to you, close to you. Ooh, close to you, close to you. Ooh, longing to be close to you, close to you. Ooh, close to you, close to you. Ooh, longing to be close to you, close to you.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful way to ease in. Just ease in. Yeah, Sava's been getting the symbol 555. Big change is coming. So we've just been doing a lot of praying and opening up, but really the change is never really in the form, but you can tell how you feel when you feel an experiential change. It just really hits you. And it's always our prayer. It's just for that direct experience. And this has been kind of an interesting week because at the monastery we've been trimming down and saying goodbye to some friends and saying welcome to another friend. There's a lot of travel going on today. Susanna traveled 4 straight days to be sitting here with us. Took off on Monday, right? And it's Thursday night. So 4 days of driving, and then I guess there was some trips going on today, so we all kind of wound up back in the same place. But it seems that we're just being taken into a deeper experience of the flow of life, like the song that came, or the dance, the big dance, just that feeling that everything is dancing and flowing, and there's an ease and an effortlessness and a peace that comes with being connected to the dance, being in the dance, which is freed up from planning and struggle and effort. The dance is effortless, but the mind that's going through a letting go process still has some contractions from time to time, and then those contractions block the awareness of this beautiful dance. And yet, that is the simplicity of everything, is just to open and keep opening. And then when you have a contraction, I like the lyrics in that first song. What was it about? When I hit my nose.
Oh, it was gross falling on my nose.
It was gross. Jesus, the Spirit's getting more humorous. It was, I mean, she was practicing it. It was gross falling on my nose. Yeah. That's kind of like in the early days when Resta would get a certain line from the angels that she would just play the song for me, and then she would just hit the certain line that she would just burst into laughter, and then she would have to laugh for 5 minutes to get it out of her system, and then she'd get her guitar again and continue on with the song. One of them was, I take my guilt in small doses. 6 billion bodies give a little to each. That was one of the lines from the angels. I take my guilt in small doses. But then there was one, I'd keep you stuck in time like flies in glue. That she just lost it with the stuck in time like flies in glue. She just burst into laughter. So that's a good one. That's the, what did you say, silly game of shame?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was in there too.
Yeah, I finally saw the game, the silly game of shame. Mm.
Silly game of shame.
And I laughed so much that I got in touch with the joy and the flow of life.
That's it. That's this, like the shock treatment. And sometimes it does seem like a little bit of a shock, but not really. You know, when you get to that certain point, then you start to laugh at what seemed to be the contrast. But at the time, when the contrast was there, it wasn't funny. You hit your nose on the, what is it?
Fell down into a deep dark hole. It was gross falling on my nose.
It was gross falling, a deep hole. Okay. Yeah. That's very concrete.
Yeah. And it starts with, I took the chance knowing nothing in advance.
Okay. That's good. That's good. So, yeah, it's beautiful because it's like where this whole summer has kind of been like a painting with lots of things going on in the painting, and now we're just starting to relax a little, and just things are starting to settle down in our mind, which is good because that's what we. Although we may have a friend coming with her cats, right? With 4 cats, so it could get lively again. The spirit's humor. But yeah, it's just starting to get to that point where we're just starting to take a breath, relax, take it easy, and just start to see the perfection of everything. I thought of you, Susanna, coming out because this has been a time, these last weeks and months has been a pretty intense emotional time, like a storm. And then I was interested to see how the trip would go, and first staying with my bachelor friend Richard and his poker game. That was your first stop. The bachelor, the ACIM bachelor and the poker game, and then the second one was Mary. And I guess Mary is in the last year or two, she went through a separation with her husband, a longtime husband. And then the third one was 2 friends that are holed up in Minnesota and going through all these intense healings, and then they offered your house, so that's where you got the best rest. No people. No people, no. Was there any animals? Nothing but mountains, empty house. Yeah, I've been there to that one too. So, and then to come here and to splash into the monastery, that's quite that could be like a little book someday. But yeah, I think it's it's beautiful in the sense that when we go on this journey, we just say yes to the journey, but we don't really know what the form will be. And the difficulties seem to arise when we think we have an idea about the form, how the form could be or should be. And once we have the thought of how the form could be or should be, then that brings a lot of expectation thoughts, that it's really like the ego trying to say, I want it thus. Jesus says that in the Course, where when you really are wanting to be right rather than happy, it sounds like old English. It sounds like something Jesus would say, I want it thus. No human being says, I want it thus. But Jesus tells us, I want it thus. We know what he means when he says that, because it's the ego going, no, with this thing, I want to be right about it, whatever this thing is. And then as we continue on with the game of shame, then more of those opportunities arise. And I guess really the shame doesn't go away until the I want it thus goes away, until we can kind of surrender and just say, Father, what is your will for me? I'm an open, receptive mind. I am a clear channel. I have no opinion about anything. Father, what is your will for me? And then imaginally things just suddenly get very still and quiet when we come into that surrender point. So really, what seems to be linear time is just consciousness, which is the domain of the ego, playing out with some preferences, some desires in form, some I want it thus, and then when the form seems to be different than the ego wants it, then the ego screams bloody murder. It's like a child throwing a temper tantrum. It's like, no, please, I'm not asking for much, but this, please give me this. I think that's when I was a child, maybe like 10 or 11 years old, I got an album one time under the Christmas tree, and there was a bunch of songs on there, but one of the songs I remember was this young man just singing. He only wanted 3 things out of life, and he was so happy to sing about these 3 things. And then the chorus was, I don't want much, just a little bitty bit. I don't want much, just a little bitty bit. I don't want much, just a little bitty bit. So what do you think I'm gonna get? And his 3 things were an axe, an apple, and a buckskin jacket. And the whole song was about these 3 things that he wanted. And I don't want much, just a little bitty bit. And Jesus is saying, well, actually that little bitty bit can seem to bring hell into your mind, because that little bitty bit is still, like Jesus says in the Beyond All Idol section of the Course, which is pretty late in the chapters. He says, when you decide upon the form of what you want, you lose the understanding of its purpose. So you can see, it's like your mind is very powerful, but when you take your powerful mind and you zoom in and you decide upon the form of what you want. Remember, the ego made up the form to start off with, so that should be a clue to be careful, because God is just pure spirit. But the ego made up the form, and then when you decide upon the form of what you want, he could just say, when the ego decides, when the ego rivets on the form of what it wants, then your mind, you lose the understanding of its purpose. Because really the only purpose that anything of this world has is for forgiveness. And in the last day or two, people have been writing some comments to, we put a post one of my quotes online, and then the comments come. It's one of them was yesterday, maybe today. If God is everything, then isn't God an illusion too? And I was just like, what? It's just like, if God is everything, then isn't God illusion or illusions too? And then after that, I wrote an answer, and then it was like, well, if the Son of God invented the ego, then, like, where did it come from? And I no, the Son of God did not invent the ego. The ego actually is just a belief in separation, and it actually doesn't have a source. But that's the question: where did the ego come from? Who created the ego? But the ego is a belief. It's a belief in separation, so it can't really have a source. So you can believe it, but it doesn't mean that it's true. It doesn't mean that separation from God has a reality. But Jesus does say, what you believe you make true for you. So in your awareness, if you believe in the ego, then you seem to perceive a lot of different emotions, fragmentation, everything. But if the whole point of the Course is to stop believing in the ego. You made the ego by believing in it, and you can dispel the ego by withdrawing your belief from it. Again, it's like divine logic. It's like Jesus, like it's pretty straightforward, and the only way you dispel the ego is by not hiding it, because it's mostly out of awareness. It's unconscious. So every day we get so many opportunities when it peeks its head, like the groundhog peeks its head out of the hole. Will it see its shadow? Yes, it always sees its shadow every day. Even if there's sunshine or cloud, the ego is always looking on a shadow. But there must come a point when it peeks out of its hole and you laugh. You just burst into laughter at it and just say, no more. This is funny. This is just a gentle laughter overcomes your mind. So that kind of puts the spiritual journey, so to speak, in a context of, then I just want to go through the day knowing that nothing is happening by accident, knowing that everything that is happening is for my own best interest, and that everything that happens without exception is for me to choose peace. That is the purpose of everything of this world, and it doesn't have any other purpose. There aren't any really positive things in the world or negative, and the Holy Spirit sees the world as neutral. So when people say, is the world getting worse or better? It's a screen. It's like a motion picture screen, it's like a white screen. And then whatever is thrown on it is what you try to make the screen into. You can call it positive. Oh, I had a great day. These good things happened. Or I had a bad day. These bad things happened. But really, even judging the good and bad in form is still part of the trick. And it's even trickier if you let yourself be convinced, where you start to imagine how your perfect day would be, and Jesus is like saying, try not to imagine it. Just try to experience it. Just try to feel it. Just try to be the peace, and don't think that it comes from anything that's happening. So that's what we experience on the journey, because there's so many shifts and changes seemingly in the form, and then if we are not really happy with what we're experiencing and perceiving, then That is the chance we have to change our mind. Simply by releasing our attachment to whatever the form was, whatever the expectation. And then we get better at that because we get into what Jesus calls our purpose. We get into our true function, and then that just takes over. It's like autopilot, Holy Spirit autopilot, where you say to yourself, here's the kind of day that I want, and I'll make no decisions by myself, and this is the day that will be given me, because I'm not trying to decide apart from the Holy Spirit. I'm not trying to hold on to an agenda or an ambition or an expectation, I know Byron Katie came up with those 4 questions, and basically, the questions are really just looking at your perception and really being honest about your emotions, and then really just honestly saying to yourself, is it true? Is it absolutely true that what I'm perceiving is true, is real? And the Course gives those beautiful workbook lessons just day by day to loosen the grip on the belief of what I think I see and what I think is true and what I think is false. Somebody wrote to me recently and they were saying, are there multiple lessons or is there really only just one? And I wrote back, it's just one. And in the end, it sounds so simple that the ego doesn't like it, but it's simply to just see the false as false. That's the core of you might say, that's the core of all perennial wisdom. That's the core of Buddhism, is to be able to simply look upon the false as false, see the nothingness for what it is. And that's the same with Jesus. He's just saying, if you join with the Spirit, you can just see the false as false. It's not multiple lessons. It's not a pyramid of lessons where, like, it's some kind of a game show where you have to just score on one level and then score to make it to the next level and the next level, and the lessons get harder and more difficult till you finally have the ultimate pinnacle challenge. It's not really even a pyramid. It's just an opportunity to just stay present with the Spirit and not let anything come in the way of what the Spirit is giving you. So, yeah, I just feel like we're just sinking deeper and deeper into what seems to be the mystical community. Kirsten started putting the mystical community, was that 2 or 3 years ago, or how long was it, on Facebook?
That's 2 years.
2 years, yeah. That was the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah, you were going to try to make it back. You were like wondering if I ever get out of here, gonna give it all away to a registered charity. That's Paul McCartney. Band on the Run. But yeah, that was kind of like a prophecy, kind of being taken more and more into like a lot of people, like a lockdown kind of a situation, kind of a very strange time for a lot of people on planet Earth. Like, what is this strange thing? I'm in Northern California. How can I be locked down in Northern California? But now, and then I think it was this Sunday. What is today? Thursday? I think it was on 60 Minutes. Somebody told me, which I think is always on Sundays. 60 Minutes is like a news magazine show. And somebody told me that the President of the United States went on to 60 Minutes and declared the pandemic is over. So there it is. When the president says it's over, started with a crazy lockdown in 2020, the mystical community came, and now Joe said the pandemic is over, officially. We wait till the president. Really? Okay. I mean, all that stuff we were doing, yeah, you can stop now. Okay. And really that's what Jesus is doing, is he's saying the ego is over. You're simply reviewing mentally what has already gone by. The ego was answered. The ego is over. It's official. I think the way Jesus said it in the Bible, he said, "Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." That was his official declaration. Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. So if it's over means it's over and gone, then that means the practice must be not trying to bring it back to life, because it didn't really have a life. Don't play the zombie game. Don't try to bring it back from the dead. It's gone. It's gone. And to me, that's the joy of the gospel. That's why they call the gospels the good news. The good news is that the error has been corrected and is no more. And so every day we get a chance to really see, is that my faith? Do I really put my full faith that it's over and gone? Or am I going to play the game? What was that? The silly game of shame. Am I going to play the game, the silly game of shame, and put my nose on the ground? It was gross. It was gross falling on my nose. So yeah, that's really where we're at, because with the ego, the temptation to perceive something wrong, in the end, even when you're going through discernment, I mean, it's funny, over all the years, we would all come together and we'd all be talking, and then somebody would say something and somebody else would go, "That's off." Remember those days? We're all in a room together, we're all talking, and talking, and then somebody says something, "That is off." And what Jesus is encouraging us to realize is that he's got lessons like, my mind holds only what I think with God. Isn't that a nice lesson? My mind holds only what I think with God. And if that lesson is true, that must mean that nothing is ever off. You guys were spared those days. Because as soon as somebody would say, "That's off," then it'd be, "What do you mean?" And then you're off and running for sometimes 8 or 13 hours. Then, okay, do we agree that we're going to stop? Yes, everyone agrees. And then when we're walking out the door, "Wait, I have something." Everyone's, "Oh." After 13 hours, "Wait, I have something I want to talk about." "Oh." You've been spared all those days. Those weren't the good old days. But that's part of the joy of what we're coming into, is coming into the big dance. You could call it the big dance. The big dance, the big swirl of joy, and just to be able to relax into that and equate that with who you are, equate that with your identity. That's the whole point of everything. To be able to be in the flow of life. That's a nice. Is that the name of the song? Don't be thrown off by those lyrics. It is the flow of life, yeah. So, yeah, we're experiencing that with our cat, Unity, the flow of life. Yeah. 100% acceptance at any hour of the day, at any time of night. Yeah. Goes out on the prowl, waits until she hears one of us flush the toilet, comes to the door, do your duty, let me in. And then the little tail is spinning, so happy. Yes, I have the greatest life. I have door people now. I have unlimited food. I can go where I want to go, do what I want to do. And that is part of the flow of life, is just being in the joy of the moment, the celebration of the moment with whatever seems to be happening. And there's no kind of, well, that was part of the line, no rules, right? That was, there's some lyrics in there about that.
Life just moves when there are no rules.
Yeah, that, I think Unity, that's her favorite song. Her favorite part of the song. Life just moves when there are no rules. Yeah. Wow. The simplicity of that. Yeah. So we're here to welcome Susanna after 4 days of driving. And now, since the president has declared the pandemic over, now we may consider some travels or something, even though we're mostly going we're going cloistered. Yeah, that will be. Today I received an email with a zip file, and the zip file though was a spreadsheet. I was talking a little bit to Susanna about it, from our friends down in Florida who are planning a Christmas retreat for us, and I have never seen such a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet covered almost everything, just with great precision and detail. Every little thing, who was going to be there and what their accommodations were, and the king size bed or queen bed or this and that, and it had the income, and then it had the fees for the lodging, and then it had the PayPal or the Venmo fees, and then the fees to David and Slava by individual. But it was just, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a spreadsheet like that. But I think I took it as, wow, that's how easy life can be. if everything is completely laid out just in front of you. And you could apply that to anything in the world. If you can imagine everything in the world is just laid out in all of its pristine glory, and even to the finest detail, it's all just there. And you can be aware of it, or you can not be aware of it. If you're aware of it, then you just have this feeling like all things are working together for good, or there's no exceptions. It's all happening for me. Everything in the world is happening for me, without exception. No wonder they call that faith, because the temptation is to look at something in the world and go, that's just not right, or that is wrong, or that is shocking. I saw today, I think it was a clip from The Tonight Show or something, where this very talented actress, Jessica Chastain, she's played Tammy Faye Baker, she's played, was it Dark 030? She played a woman in the Molly's Game. She played this CIA agent that was hunting for Osama bin Laden and so forth. But she was on The Tonight Show, and she was talking, and she said, I don't know, I think it was last summer, last August, she just got this strong, strong feeling that It was just, this past August. We're in October now. She got this very strong feeling that she was to go to Ukraine and go to Kiev, I think the capital, and meet the president's wife and everything. So I think she flew across, I think she said she flew to Poland, and then she took, it was a train or a couple trains or a bus and a train, and then all the way in, and then just the sights and sounds and smells that she experienced going over. She's like a very trained actress who's been in many, many amazing movies, but she just was kind of shocked. And the more she went, and the more she was there and taking a train and everything, she did finally at some point have the thought cross her mind, should I be doing this? Like, should I really be here? It's like, she's probably thinking, I'm transporting my body, my personality into a war zone. She had the thought, should I be here? And then she went on, and I think she went in to see some of the places and children, and went to a hospital and saw a little girl whose legs were missing, had been blown off with some explosions and different things. And she, one point, found herself in a room, and she was like looking around. She was just talking to some people, and then she was looking around, and she looked up on the ceiling, and she thought, are those bullet holes? And then she looked in the walls, and she said, are those bullet holes? And then she looked, and there was a 6-year-old child and different ones that were there, and she was just starting to go. It was so different from anything that she had perceived. And then she looked on her chair that she was sitting on, and she looked in the back, and she said, are those on the seat where she was, and right in the chair she was sitting in had these, she's like, bullet holes. But she was just describing how it was such a shock, just a shock to her perception. It's just, she was just not accustomed to it. She just put herself seemingly in a situation where she just suddenly just started to, being a movie actress, you are exposed to all things, and it's the movie, and then she was just like, are these books, look at, and this child, and she started to just take it in more and more and more. But I think that's kind of the way it goes with the spiritual journey. You find yourself seemingly in different situations that really appear to be different from each other, and yet the mind training that you're going through is more to come so into purpose, so into alignment with the Holy Spirit, so into alignment with God, that your mind, which had flipped before away from the light and into what seemed to be the projection, you actually go and you flip back toward the light. And suddenly the world seems like one thing. It all seems the same. And you're looking at it from an entirely different perspective, like you've totally flipped back prior to the separation. And you're just, oh my God, it's a dream. Just like a takes your breath away kind of a feeling, like, oh my God, what is this? Because, when we're looking through the filter of the ego, it's blurred vision, it's double vision, it's fragmentation, it's differences, and people going around, oh yeah, variety is the spice of life, and it's like, what does that even mean now? What does that mean, the variety is the spice of life? Before you were sure, you believed it, and now you're wondering, was that a trick too? Was there something simpler than variety? Was there something simpler? And you kind of flip back to the light. And I think, we use so many different tools and techniques, but yeah, we do watch movies with that purpose in mind, to be able to watch movie from a new perspective, to be able to finally accept that we never react to what we perceive is happening. We always react to our interpretation of what we perceive is happening. And so it's never the form that upsets us, it's the interpretation of the form that's upsetting. And that's always an egoic interpretation until it's not, until we finally pray and say, please release me from this crazy interpretation that I've been having, this human interpretation. Please free me from that. Please let me be free of that. Please show me my true will, my true happiness. So in the end, I think that's just the prayer of the heart. It's just willingness for that. It's not about techniques. It's not about, special formulas or finding the secret or all the different kind of things. It's just the prayer of the heart, finally, that wants the simple truth and just prays, please, please, I only want the truth. And that truth is not found in a specific form. So everyone who comes to this place of time and space is looking for like a specific form, and it's not to be found in any of the specific forms, but it is found in a perspective. When we go inside and play, show me the world differently. Show me the way you see the world. When we really mean it, then it's given to us. And that's the key. We in the end, we have to we sort through all the things that we think we want out of the world, and then we finally come to the place where we don't want anything of the world. Remember that song? I bought a ticket to the world, but now I've come back again. Why do I find it hard to write the next line? Oh, I want the truth to be said. Yes, George Michael. Whoosh. When I first heard that line, I was like, wow, that's great. Whoa. Yeah. Bought a ticket to the world, but now I've come back again. Now I've come back into my mind. Now I've come back inward toward the sanity, toward the peace, toward the stillness. That's what I was praying for. That's what I was asking for. That's what I was always going for. And then it's yes, a sigh of relief, a sigh of peace. So then you start to realize, wow, then every day that's my prayer. And then you can kind of just be kind of carried along through the day, trusting that you're in the right place at the right time, trusting that everything that is needed is provided, trusting that there's no accidents, trusting that there's nothing at random, trusting that there's no such thing as luck or fortunate or unfortunate. Those were the thoughts and the beliefs that made it seem treacherous. But then in the end, it's the faith. It's this expanding faith that just is like, okay, Lord, you got me right where you want me. I'm not where I am by accident. I'm right where you want me. Wasn't there a song about that? Hello, Dolly. Well, hello, Dolly. So good to have you back where you belong. You're looking swell, Dolly. I can tell, Dolly. It's right back where you belong. That's just coming back to your mind. That's coming back to your awareness. Ah, that's where I belong. Aware. I'm not sleepwalking through this world. I'm not wishing and hoping that things would be different. I'm back where I belong, back where I always have been, back where I always will be. Back, 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 back. And Jesus is a cheerleader for us. He's cheering us on, He says at one part in the text, he said, "You have not gone back far enough." So, well, if Jesus says you haven't gone back far enough, then here we go. Back, back, back. Like a baseball player in the outfield. The ball's deep. Back, 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 back to the fence. Leaps. Yes. He makes the catch. You could feel the excitement of going back. We're going back every day. Back, 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 back. We were watching something maybe a week or two ago, and there was this announcer that is a baseball announcer, he's a football announcer, and I think it was back, I don't know what year, maybe like 1980 Olympics or something. It was old. It was the United States was playing Russia in the finals of the Olympics for the gold medal. And of course, Russia had won too many gold medals to count because every year they would win. Occasionally Finland or Sweden trying to get in there. But the United States, a bunch of basically 18-year-old kids playing the Russian national team for the gold medal. And this announcer, he was an announcer for baseball when I was growing up and football and everything. He was the announcer. And as the final period was counting down to 0, with the United States holding a 1-goal lead, he got down to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. And he's like, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes! That's how he ended the game. Screaming. It's the final 3-2-1. He didn't even go 3-2-1. "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes! Of course, he's very famous now. It's been played over and over and over. So, but just imagine that's Jesus's voice. And it's not a hockey game. It's a game of time and space. It's a game of shame. And Jesus is like, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. That is the end of the game. That's the end of the shame game. Is the big yes, the big glorious yes. And they were asking this guy Al Michaels about that. They said, "Yeah, no one will ever forget you calling the final seconds of that Olympic hockey game." And he said, "Well, that's good. I'm glad people still are inspired by it. I'm glad people are still happy when they hear it. I'm glad that they play it over and over." He said, he talked about 9/11, and he talked about the launch on Cape Canaveral when the teacher and the different ones when the rocket ship exploded. And he talked about the pandemic, and he talked about the wars. He talked about all the other things, and he said, "So I was screaming for happiness at something that I felt was joyful." And he said, we need to celebrate. We need to find our moments, regardless of what it seems to be about. We need to find the moments of, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. We need to find that. He said, I think it's great that they play it all the time. I don't know if you'd ever heard it, but they played that happy reminder. Because really everything in the world is just symbols. And we're all just looking for symbols to remind us of home, of heaven. And we need lots of reminders, it seems, to realize that the game of shame is over, that the ego game, or as Jesus says, be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. That's a beautiful experience, it's a beautiful presence, and we're just really tuning into that, even though there's been seemingly a game of forgetfulness, we're into the remembering. Even though there's been a deep amnesia, we're into the waking up. It's a time of great celebration. A friend of mine wrote to me from Germany today, and she was just pondering and writing it all out to me. And she knows that sometimes I call people saints in training. So she just was out walking in the woods, and she just decided, how does that work with me? Because she likes to read the lives of the mystics and saints, and she was talking about, is it Hildegard was a German mystic, and she started looking into different German mystics, and then she decided to put her name and then the little town in Germany where she grew up with this beautiful little church. She put her own name in there just to feel it out. How does it feel? And then she started reading more about the German mystics, and there was a group of women that just decided that they loved Jesus so much, but they didn't want to go into the convent. And it was the Middle Ages, and they just decided, let's just all move in together. We don't need a convent. We don't need a bunch of rituals. We all love Jesus. Let's just move in together and focus our minds fully on Jesus. And they did. And she was reading about it going, wow. And the Middle Ages. And here I'm thinking, well, I can't be a mystic now. I can't be a saint now because there's this and this going on and this and that in Germany. And she said, no, if they did it in the Middle Ages, they could do it. And they didn't have to subscribe to rituals or join a convent or whatever. She's like, wow, yeah, I can do that. I can do this. I've got no excuses. I'm going to do it. I'm going for it. So I was writing back, yes, it is prophesized. I was just, yes, this is it. This is your calling. Yes, there is no reason for delay, or I forget what all I said. I was just like joining right in that idea. She was just making her mind up that she would be a saint. She basically had let go of all her ideas of starting an online business, doing this, and relationships, and all the different things she had in her mind. And she just finally was settling down into her sainthood idea. Yeah, of course. That's what I've felt my whole life. I knew this. My mother said I was supposed to be a preacher. I was like, oh no. And everybody's in this and this, but now she recently made a pilgrimage to Assisi too, and it was very profound and powerful for her. And now she's back in Germany, but it was so beautiful. Just wrote. So then I started thinking of the people that I know that are over in Europe that are also just at that point where there's no other way to turn but to be a saint. So I made a Facebook Messenger Saints group. And I'm like, and you are a saint. Put them in, and you are a saint. And then I copied all the stuff she had written, and I put it in, and I started writing things in. And here's the book I'm listening to right now with Richard Rohr. He's a saint too. And I'm going to get that book. We're going to get it in Spanish and read it. And yeah. So I made a saint group, I think maybe of, 6 or 7 saints saying, it's a done deal. Just don't look any further. You are saints. Don't even hesitate and look around the world. What could be this? No, don't even try it because it's destined. I said, this is prophecy. This is actual, just and really in the end that's what we do when we say, I want a new way to look at the world. I want a new perception. It's just what plays out in form looks like a saint, but it's actually just a decision in the mind. It's like, of course. Especially, when you actually take the time to read about the lives of the saints and you start reading about their lives and you start to feel this swirl going in your heart. Like, oh, wow, that's so cool. They stepped away from everything. They stepped away from everything of the world to devote themselves to Christ. And then you can feel, even reading about them, even if they lived centuries ago, you can feel it. You can feel it. I think in the audiobook I was listening with Richard Rohr, it was, what was the name of the guy that I mentioned the other day? He was like around from the 200 or 300 AD, but he was like, we were looking at movies, and he was one of the movies. Oh, it was of Loyola. It was something of Loyola. Yeah. We're still looking we're digging out all these movies. Some of them are on YouTube and Amazon Prime. We're just like going through the rubble. Look at this one. It was, he was Ignatius. Ignatius of Loyola. We were like, oh, look at this one. Look at this one. And because it's almost like you're going through a field and you're finding the gems and the pebbles that glow out of all the rocks. You see some glowing rocks. What's this? Ignatius of Loyola. Oh, that sounds really good. Just the name, it gets your attention. Then you start to look into it. Ooh, oh. There's quite a few movies we're finding. About the.
Our stuff, bunch of movies now we have to check out.
Yeah. It's just like every day is like a discovery. But imagine going on like with your Sherlock Holmes discovery hat, your sleuth hat, and you're going looking at the lives of the mystics and saints, and then you're bringing it to how does that apply to my life, my experience? Because time itself is just a trick. It's like we need to, what did they discover when they did go for this? What did they face? What did they discover? You don't have to reinvent the wheel and like you're in a jungle with a machete trying to hack your way through, which it does seem in this world like you have to hack your way through and survive and carve out your path in a very thick jungle with no path. But no, there are paths. They've already been taken. And now we're just reactivating our mind, our heart, to find those, to be inspired by them. When we're thinking of leaving something behind, you don't have to look very far to see, like with St. Francis, we're showing 3 more God's Not Dead movies, but we're going to end up showing Brothers and Sister Moon. What was the one we were talking about today that needs the Spanish subtitles? C.S. Lewis. The Most Reluctant Convert. The Life of C.S. Lewis. Yeah, we're going to have to get the Spanish subtitles for that because he grows up with his brother, and then I think his mother dies, and then his father is really strict and stern, and then he goes and he finds this tutor who's an amazing man who knows all the great writers and all the great philosophers of all time, and he gets so into that. Then he goes to Oxford over in England. He goes for an Oxford education, and he goes deeper and deeper into everything, and he's so sure that there is no God. He is so convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt. He's a staunch atheist. There is no God. Whereas the movies I'm showing, God is dead. or it never existed. He's read all the great writers. He can argue with people and everything. And then he gets put in with a roommate I think it's in Oxford. He gets put in with a roommate. And he's talking to his roommate, and his roommate says, well, here's where I'm at. I was looking at what Jesus said in the Bible, and I think that everything he was speaking was the truth. And C.S. Lewis, that's his roommate. And he's like, what? And then the guy's like, yeah, he's all fired. He's like, everything in the Bible. And then, of course, little by little, C.S. Lewis just starts to have experiences and more experiences. And C.S. Lewis, he's so articulate. He's humorous. He's funny. He's articulate. And he's a staunch atheist. And then you can see his whole perspective on everything shifts as he keeps joining with this roommate who's convinced that everything that Jesus spoke in the Bible is true. My kingdom is not of this world, and this. Because all of his ideas and perceptions about the world were based on the world of the five senses, kind of like Isaac Newton and Newtonian physics. It was all of the philosophers, the poets, everyone that he read, he just became more and more and more sure that there was no God because of everything that he perceived in this world. And then suddenly the bubble got popped. And he had experiences, a lot of them. One of them was he was sent off to the war. He was sent off to the World War. I think, wasn't he shot or explosion went off, and his best friend died right in front of him during the war. And he went through all these kind of experiences where he became so convinced that what was being spoken about in the Bible and in spiritually was a world beyond this world. He became convinced that the world of the senses was not reliable. He went from putting 100% belief and faith in the world of the senses to becoming absolutely convinced that there was a world beyond this. And then if you do the workbook of A Course in Miracles, you come to lesson 128 in the workbook. The world I see holds nothing that I want. And in that lesson, Jesus starts off a sentence with the one thing you can be sure of, one thing to do with this world is pass it by. Jesus Christ. The one thing to do with, what's this world I see holds nothing I want. I remember I went down to Lexington, Kentucky, and I was invited by a man, Mason, who was he was in the Lexington Symphony Orchestra, and he was in the first row of the first violins. And I was giving my talk down there at a church, maybe a Unity church at one time, and then I started talking about lesson 128. The world I see holds nothing that I want. And I said it, and he was hosting me at his house with his mother, and he was there, and he went, that's when I stopped doing the course. I stopped doing the workbook of A Course in Miracles on that very lesson. I said, you did? You stopped? He said, I read, the world I see holds nothing that I want. And I said, that is not true for me. And he closed the book. That was where he stopped. And so I watched him, and he just looked at me. And he's the guy who's invited me there. I said, well, so you didn't read lesson 129? He said, no. I shut that. I said, 129 is a great lesson. He said, what's it say? 129 is, beyond this world is a world I want. You see, Jesus never rips the carpet out without laying the gift of grace right into our minds. The world I see is nothing that I want, and beyond this world is a world I want. And that's what C.S. Lewis got so excited about, because he went from being a staunch atheist to being convinced that what we perceive with the five senses is not reality. As you watch how the world goes every day, you can start to see what C.S. Lewis was going through. You started to be convinced that what was perceived was not reality. And that's what Jesus is luring. He's saying, beyond this world is a world I want. He's saying, that's what you need to focus on. He even has a section in the text called The Real Alternative, where he says, all of the roadways of this world lead to death, and men have died upon seeing this. Yet, if they'd just taken one more step beyond that point, they would have been lifted to heights of happiness. Whoa! All the roadways of the world lead to death, and then one step beyond that is lifted to heights of happiness. That's describing the spiritual journey, the faith that it takes, because there's a lot of evidence when you look at the history and you look at the five senses, and wars and then more wars and plagues and diseases and earth changes and tsunamis and hurricanes and tornadoes and on and on and on, devastation in many, many forms. And then Jesus is saying, all the roadways of the world lead to death, but even though men have died upon seeing this, they could have been lifted up to heights of happiness. Heights of happiness? How do you put that in the same... Roadways of the world lead to death, men have died upon seeing it, and heights of happiness. Where did that come in? That doesn't seem to fit with the other two sentences. So I would say that's part of the spiritual journey. It's disillusionment, if things are falling apart, and hallelujah for the saving grace that says God is love and you are love and you are always love. You are an eternal being of light and you just forgot it. And then that's the end of the amnesia. Heights of happiness. That's what Jesus calls the real world or the happy dream, beyond the five senses. He even describes it in the Course. He says the real world is nothing like the world that you perceive. There are no artificial lights to light the streets. There are no buildings. There are no stores where you buy endless things that you do not even need and do not really want. You know, he goes into great detail describing the world. He even says in, Lesson 76, you really believe you would starve unless you had stacks of green paper strips and piles of metal discs. You really believe a needle pushed through a sharpened, or a fluid pushed through a sharpened needle will ward off disease. He said, this is madness. He's just basically saying all the laws and rules that you believed in and learned through all your education are madness. And it's good when we have people like C.S. Lewis, because C.S. Lewis was a good student. He loved to read books. He couldn't sleep at night, so he had his nose in books. And he was reading and reading all the great writers and poets and philosophers and everything, building his staunch atheistic position. And then, boom, one encounter with a roommate starts the whole unraveling of the whole system of belief. And Jesus is saying, you You took many steps to build this world of time and space, but never once did you pause and ask yourself why you were doing it. You just went on building and building and layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of falsity, never once saying, and why am I doing this? What am I doing all this work for? Why am I constructing so many things? So that's what we are in store for. We can't wait to show C.S. Lewis. What is it? The most reluctant convert. Yeah, that's like his. There was a name for the name of his autobiography, but it was something about joy. Because that's what does it for him when he's finally going back to a childhood memory of, I think, his brother out in a field bringing him like a bouquet of flowers. And he remembers this childhood memory where he felt like overwhelming joy before he learned all these things, read all these books and learned it. He had a memory of this brother bringing him a bouquet of like wildflowers. And it was an explosion of joy. And that's kind of symbolic of how we keep going into our mind to find the joy, to find that memory of joy. It doesn't matter how far it's buried down there. It doesn't matter how much stuff we threw on top to cover it. It doesn't matter how hard we tried to forget it. It's still there. It's still there. It's like the light that won't go out. You can cover it, but you can't put it out because it's real, because it's true. And, there's a whole section in the Course called The Forgotten Song. Listen, perhaps you catch a glimpse of an ancient memory. Oh, it's so beautiful, the whole passage, Forgotten Song. Wow. That's the kind of passage in the Course. If you just said that to yourself every morning when you got out of bed, not the whole song has come with you, but just a wisp of memory. And it goes, you can remember. And then it starts to go into this, there's a light, and it's a golden light, and then what seems to surround the light is gone, and that, it's just such a poetic passage of like you're going through a tunnel back into reality with a little wisp of memory to start. Even Siddhartha, the story of Buddha, that's why he left the palace, was he heard the melody, and he recognized the melody, and everybody else was asleep, so him and his trusty friend and the horse got out of the palace. He was supposed to be king and all the things the ego had set for him, and he heard a melody. He took off. He left the palace. He left it all behind. And that's really what we're doing now. Even though we may not have been living in palaces, we had our own version of the palace. We tried it. We tried it on our own, but deep inside we've known we'd be back to set things straight. Yes! We knew we would turn it around. We knew we would not fall for the trick. We knew we would reach our sainthood. We would go for it in this lifetime. we start to see, like my friend Tanya, who wrote me today, she's like, Tanya of some small town in Germany. Saint Tanya of, it was Saint Tanya of this small town in Germany. I wrote back, yes, yes, that's it. All you have to do is embrace it. All you have to do is believe it. All you have to do is see the value of it. To live a devoted life. What else would you really do with this world but live a devoted life? And then the more you read the saints, the lives of the saints, you're like, oh, wow, yes. St. Francis, we'll show Brother Sun Sister Moon again because he goes through some interesting undoings in that movie. But even then, when the church sends the church soldiers, and that sounds funny, The church soldier. When the church sends the church soldiers to burn down his church. That's the 1200s, 13th century. Ooh, church soldiers burn down the church. This is the kind of stuff that he had to face. Probably you won't face some of those extremes. He did it for you. He's already faced those things. But you can learn from his experiences. You don't have to build a church stone by stone and have the church soldiers come, burn it down, and kill one of your followers. That's not too good of a name for the Catholic Church at the time. But he was, what have I done? What have I done? I must learn, and then he turns to Jesus to be shown. I must know the way, I must know what mistakes, and then he takes that long pilgrimage to see the Pope. Pope Innocent the Third is the Pope. Remember that part? Pope who says, all of our preoccupation is on original sin, but we forget original innocence. Coming out of a Pope? Wow! There it is, the I amness, prior to time, the innocence, the original innocence. So that's our journey. That's our journey. Do we have the purple mic? Amelia.
Thank you. Yeah, so I had an interesting day yesterday. I started the morning waking up in pure bliss and really remembering who I am and that I am spirit, and I just felt like celebrating, and I was just like blissed out. And then further along the day, because I was so happy, I guess, I was forgetting some things that I needed to do, some tasks, and then all this guilt started to really come up in me. And it was like all these small things that happened during the day, it was just triggers for some even deeper guilt of even being born. And yeah, I've never been so happy like in the morning, and then I just ended the evening in so much grief and pain, and I was in the chapel and I was just crying, and I just felt like I just miss home so much. I just want to go home to God. I'm so sick of feeling guilt. I just want to go home. And it felt like it was my soul who was crying for God, like, I just want to be in your arms. And now I'm starting to feel like, who is this person or this sadness? Like, is it just the ego that are playing games with me, or is it truly my soul that is feeling like it's such a compromise to even be on earth? I don't know. And it's like, since I've been here, like, I'm starting to really remember and really know God, and I didn't at all before I got here. So it's like everything has changed, and I'm starting to see through the illusion and the world that has no value, and it's just what I'm feeling now is just like, who am I? Because it's like the personality or the character Emily, she's the one that has the past and pain, and just having a personality is pain. But there's a part of me that also is afraid to let go completely, because then I feel like, then it feels like I am abandoning Emily. Like, I see myself as a child, and it's like, yeah, I'm just confused about what is ego and what is me, and I'm afraid that the ego will trick me, and where it's like, this is you, but it is not really me. It's just all very confusing. I hope it makes sense.
Yeah. There's There's a workbook lesson in the Course where Jesus describes it that way, where he says, there is a child in you who desperately wants to go home. And that's really that feeling. There's a child in you that desperately wants to go home. And yet when he goes on and he says, you may think it's like associated with your childhood. Because oftentimes when people do inner child work, they go back in their mind and their memory and let's redo some of the scenes and let's have a different outcome this time and so on and so forth. But in that same lesson, he says that you may believe it's in your childhood, but that childhood is a distant memory that never happened. That's what Jesus... so much for inner child work. It's like, what? It's like, okay, the child of you wants desperately to go home. Yeah, I know, my inner child, I've been working on it for all these years. Yeah. No, that, you think it's associated with your past, but that's a distant memory that never happened. And then he says, the child, he needs but some instance of stillness to breathe the fresh air and to remember his true home. Stillness. He's like prescribing instance of stillness for this child that desperately wants to go home. Very different than trying to redo the past or reconfigure something in the past. He's just saying, no, it's an ancient, distant memory that never happened. You won't find it by rehashing anything in the past. But he is saying that there is a way to be reborn in the stillness where you drop down, and he's got all these workbook lessons, sink down beneath the riotous shrieks and sounds of this insane world. He just does guided meditations to sink down deep within yourself to the kingdom of heaven. He uses all these kind of guided meditations or forgiveness lessons. Think of somebody who harmed you or didn't treat you well, mistreated you, and this and this. You have thought of him now. He takes you right in, and then you think of somebody, and he goes, "This one we will use to reach your true self today." Meaning like you're going to have to forget everything you think you know about this one that you just thought of, that you have a grievance with. He's going to take us in. So I think that is the thing. It's there, you could call it almost, it seems like some people call it like a soul sickness. Like there's a soul sickness that is grief. It's like it's some kind of a deep, intense grief that's on there. And then as you go down through that ring of darkness in your mind, it feels like the weight of the whole world is on your shoulders. It feels like, what did I ever say or do to have to face this? Kind of like you feel like you've got the weight of the whole world on you, like it's some kind of giant burden, but it's really just guilt. It's just this fear and guilt that's been pushed away for so long and distracted from, but now you start to face it more and more. So, when you read the writings of the mystics and saints, they do describe this in their own ways. And it's unsettling, it's uncomfortable, it's like there's no wiggle room, when you go toward it. And then Jesus is basically saying, in your mind there's a ring of fear that you have to pass through to go to the light. So even in his stages of development of trust, 4 out of 6 are difficult or challenging, unsettling. He's using a bunch of different words, but they aren't loving emotions. It's like you're going through something to be free of something. And that's what the mystics and saints were doing with their life. They got to a point of the things they'd done in their life, and then they just thought, I need to have some kind of reconciliation in my soul. There needs to be something that has to be brought into alignment, or some kind of inner harmony that I have to find. what's that Saint Teresa of Lisieux, the young one. Her sisters went into the convent, and then she wanted to follow in their footsteps, but she was only 15 years old, and the rules back then were you cannot enter the convent at 15 years old. It's against the rules, against the church rules. So she had to petition the Pope. I have to go. I have to get into the convent with my sisters. I have to go. And the Pope said, okay. and then her brief life, she was very devoted and very simple, but it was more of the practice of going into that innocence, going into that light, the practice, that happiness that you felt at the beginning of the day, like happy for no earthly reason. And then you get a taste of it, but a taste is not enough. You have to come back for more. You have to come back because that's your soul's, we'll say, destiny, is to find that. You're just destined for it. That's just the best word for it. It's just a destiny. And then yielding into that destiny, even though the ego will try to throw all kinds of obstacles and temptations and distractions, and you're going along, you're happy, then you look at Facebook and you see some friends going to Bali, or you're, come on, and then the ego tries to get you with that one, like, will you bite on that one? It's like, you see how it works. But it's that, in the end, it's the destiny. It's our destiny to be happy, and we've tried many ways in the world. Many concepts we tried on. We tried on different ways and different costumes and things, and yeah, it's not doing it. It's not fulfilling us. So, even when we listen to some of those Kim Walker songs, she'll say, feel your hunger tonight. She's singing to the concert, feel your hunger, feel your hunger. She's just pleading with a stadium of 17,000. Everybody feel your hunger tonight. She's like, it's kind of, she's not talking about for food either. She's just trying to bring everybody into the hunger, into, I need the light. I need divine love. I'm desperate for love. So she's like pulling them, get past those layers of denial. Feel your hunger tonight. Feel your hunger tonight, and then pleading, because that's her own, she'll say it's not about singing songs and concert. It's about activating her own hunger for Christ. That's why she's singing in front of 16,000 people with all that passion. She's just there to activate her own hunger for Christ, her own hunger for the light, and to be, let thine eye be single. Jesus said, come to a single perception, a single interpretation of the world. He was saying it in so many different ways. So, and isn't it good when you start to feel that, and then you start to look around and start to see symbols and witnesses of that? That's a beautiful thing too, to just appreciate that, Even with us, with our little cat, she does get that look sometimes, like she doesn't understand the world. Like when we were coming over tonight, she was just sitting on her little bed and, what's happening? Yeah, that clueless look. What's happening? And that's good. It's the ego says, no, you can't be clueless. You have to know. You have to know what you're doing. But this is more the prayer of the heart, to say, I don't want to know what I'm doing, but I want to be carried into who I am, or I want to be led. I want to be activated into that. And yeah, that's it. So it's, in that sense, there was a movie that I watched, I think it was called Deja Vu, and it was Vanessa Redgrave, and she was saying something to the effect of, I don't think there's ever really a problem because a problem is just an experience of truth coming closer. It was in a line in this movie. Oh, that's what a problem is. It's just the truth coming closer, and the ego is going, stop, 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 problem, problem. And the mind that tries to analyze the problem or figure it out is the ego. But it's just another veil, another trick. It's not to be, the problem is not to be figured out or analyzed, it's to be surrendered. Like, I hope I have been mistaken about this perception, and then you give it over, and then let the spirit do the work, take it from there. So that's good. It's a good position. Yeah. You're welcome. You feel like another song, maybe?
Yeah, I could sing another song. I'm going to sing My Savior. Falling down and crying out for help, praying that someone will take my hand. Stuck in dark thoughts and beliefs, all alone, calling out to you, I can't make it on my own. You are my Savior, I believe in you. A changeless mind that knows the truth, shows me the darkness is made up by me, takes my hand and leads me to fly free. Help me trust that you hear my call when I feel that I'm hitting a wall. God, please hear me, I need your help to turn my mind to my true self. You are my Savior, I believe in you. A changeless mind that knows the truth, shows me the darkness is made up by me, takes my hand and leads me to fly free. You take my hand and we 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 fly free.
whisper we are the same. Let me realize what I hear is true. All I long is to be with you. You are my savior, I believe in you. A changeless mind that knows the truth, shows me the darkness is made up by me, takes my hand and leads me to fly free. You take my hand and we 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 fly free. Fly free.
It's beautiful. You can just feel yourself soaring. Fly free. Yeah, that's important to just keep a space in your mind for that, because it's very much of going through the darkness to the light, and it's very much peeling the onion and exposure, and it's the prelude to the fly free and savior it seems to be facing a lot. I remember when I was just going through the early workbook lessons, and the lesson really kind of hit me pretty hard, because it was against all my programming and conditioning and being a Christian and studying the Bible and Genesis and all that stuff. But lesson number 14 in the course is, God did not create a meaningless world. It's just coming right out. God did not create a meaningless world, but actually it's what's so profound is, for me, what comes on 13, all this stuff about Friday the 13th and the 13th and everything. It's actually what's in 13 that to me is most profound, because 14 is God did not create a meaningless world, but 13, if you go back one lesson, is a meaningless world engenders fear. And in that lesson, it's the most psychologically, philosophically practical lesson, because he's like pulling the lid off of the mind and saying, let's take a peek what's under the lid, or like for a car, let's lift the hood and let's look what is the engine in there. Let's look closely at what's going on in consciousness. A meaningless world engenders fear. And he says, you think you're afraid of things in the world. You're afraid of certain outcomes or circumstances. It could be, plagues or starvation or weather or economic things, political things, family things. You believe that it's the world that upsets you, but A meaningless world engenders fear. It's not a hostile world. A meaningless world engenders fear. It's not a dangerous world. A meaningless world engenders fear. And then as you go down further in the lesson, he gives the first direct cause-effect relationship about guilt and fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. Read down the paragraphs. Why? Why does the meaningless world engender fear? Why? Why? Meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. Oh my gosh. He's giving major cause-effect lesson in 13. He doesn't just leave it at a meaningless world engenders fears. Because I think I am in competition with God, because I believe an identity that God did not create. And if I believe I'm an identity that God did not create, I must think I'm in competition with God. You may dismiss this line. You may resist this line. You may fight against this line. He's introducing a cause-effect relationship, explaining exactly why there's fear, exactly why there's shame and pain and guilt. He's giving the master lesson on lesson 13. 14 is God did not create a meaningless world, but then he's really going after the underpinnings of the fear and guilt by saying you believe you're in competition with God around your identity. Either God created you or you believe you can create yourself, or invent's a better word. It's like that's what's going on. So he says that with this projected world, both the ego and the Holy Spirit are vying for whose meaning will be written on the screen. If you continue to believe you're in competition with God, the ego will fill the space up with interpretations and dark imaginings that reinforce your fear and reinforce your guilt. But if you pause there and you don't go for that, pause a moment and then you ask the Holy Spirit to give the meaning, the Holy Spirit will give you the meaning of the world. If you give it the space, if you give the Holy Spirit the space to write the meaning of the forgiven world, you will see. So that's really what we're dealing with when we are dealing with upsetting emotions. It's getting down to that sense of meaninglessness. So you could, if you're having a tough day and you say, I'm having a bad day, this went wrong, this and this and this, but a meaningless world engenders fear. I'm afraid of the meaninglessness of the world. That's why the ego puts all the pizzazz and all the variety and distractions and spices it up, because it doesn't want the mind dropping down too deep to give up on the meaning that it had and ask the Holy Spirit for a new meaning. So that's what we might say is going into the dark night of the soul, or facing the ring of fear, is just knowing ahead of time. And you know, we know from the writings of the mystics and saints that they dip down deeper and deeper. Christian mystics from all traditions, Vipassana teachers, Vipassana teachers go down to reach a point where they kind of hit a wall of fear in their mind in their deep meditations, and then they're usually like, what is this? But Jesus is describing it. He's been there before, and he's been through it, and he knows what's on the other side of it, and he's got good news about what's beneath it. But that's what is coming up when there's disillusionment, when there's when there's fear, when there's guilt, when there's a sense of boredom even, when there's a sense of boredom, when there's a sense of restlessness, it's not really a boring world or a hostile world or a restless world or an evil world. It's a meaningless world engenders fear. Because the ego has made this world of false meanings as a giant distractive device to keep the mind from be still and know that I'm God, from the basic core teachings of go into the stillness and the silence. So that's what's so great about this Course in Miracles. It's actually he's exposing all the tricks, all the dynamics, and even when the ego's telling you something on the surface, like, well, if this problem would just go away on the surface, then I would be happy. And Jesus is like, don't fall for that either. You're going to have to pass through this. But I am with you. We will pass through this together. We will drop down past this ring of fear and past the temptation to throw more meaning onto the world. And then, my life, as I've known it, is falling apart. You are my Savior. I believe in you. Take my hand and we will fly. Jesus is like saying, yeah, keep coming, keep coming. We're going to fly. I've got soaring in mind. But you got to go through the meaninglessness. And that's important. That's what's so great about the teachings of the Course is it's just laying everything bare. It's like saying, you're worried about your meditation practice, just do the lessons. You're worried about if you just got the right technique, just do the lessons. You may not believe in these lessons. Just do the lessons. You may actively resist these lessons. Just do the lessons. As the Nike commercial, just do it. Jesus is like, gee, I like that. Just do it. Just do it. And that's the beauty of this is a path of listen and follow, of practical application where you've got your workbook lesson, you've got your day, and of course the day will be orchestrated just for the mind to accept the lesson. That's the only purpose of the day, really. It doesn't really matter what's happening. It's good, even like Emily was saying about that, where you have happy, 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 and then, oh, I missed this, I forgot this, oh, terrible, terrible, guilt, guilt, guilt. And Jesus is like saying, come back here, come back to me, because the joy is still there, the lightness, the laughter. And believe me, we have seen it all. I remember in Mexico one time we had a gentleman there who was helping out at La Casa, and he was living there at La Casa and everything, and one day he was, I think his main task was cleaning the pool, but one day Danny had just a full-blown mystical experience, and it was so vast, and then when he seemed to come back from it, he was like, I don't know how I can clean the pool. And so then it's that whole reconciliation thing, like when you have the mystical experience, it's just it. And then when you aren't in it, then the questions start. How can I clean the pool? How can I do my task for the day? This and this. We've seen these kind of things happen all the time. They've happened for many, many, many years. But it still comes back to the practice of the lesson that a meaningless world engenders fear. We're just being asked to trust Jesus and really go all the way with that. He's just like saying, keep coming to me. Keep coming to me. Don't try to look into the darkened glass and draw some meaning from the darkened glass. Keep coming inside to me. And those workbook lessons are designed to do that. The meaningless world engenders fear. My thoughts are images I have made. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. It's sprinkled all the way. I think it's always good to just go over the first 23 lessons. It's just that the first 23 lessons is the master class, which I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. That's like the drum roll. Obviously, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts, because it's only the attack thoughts in my mind that are upsetting me. It's not an external world that is doing it to me as a person. It's attack thoughts in the mind. It's grievances. Grievances hide the light of the world in me. My grievances hide the light of the world in me. My attack thoughts hide the light of the world in me. So it's just an encouragement, Keep coming to forgiveness. Keep coming to forgiveness. Keep remembering. Somebody just wrote me, it was yesterday, they wrote me a question. They said, how can I apologize without inducing guilt in my mind? That was the question I got. How can I apologize without inducing guilt in my mind? And the answer was, the goal is forgiveness. We're asked to forgive. We're asked to forgive, and when we forgive, that does not induce guilt. But the very question was assuming the apology. How can I apologize and not induce guilt? You see? What was that famous movie with Ali McGraw and Ryan O'Neal? Love Story? Was that it? I think it was. We need our historians. Love Story. Ali McGraw, Ryan O'Neal. And then Ali McGraw, they fall in love, and then Ali McGraw's character gets sick, and then the line is uttered in the movie, love is never having to say that you're sorry. Whoa. Whoa. Feel the energy of that one. That was a line from the movie Love Story. Love is never having to say you're sorry. Because if you're sorry, then you believe something happened that actually didn't happen at all. That's where the sorry comes in. I'm sorry. Sorry for what I did to you. Who was the I that did it? Jesus is saying, you may believe this forgiveness is difficult for you, but who is the you that's in this world? He asked at one point, who is the you that's in this world? That's the depth of this. So the answer was just, each moment is an opportunity to forgive. And forgiveness is the goal. The goal isn't saying you're sorry. The goal is forgiveness. But it's the goal of the forgiveness that Jesus teaches, which is you forgive your brother, your sister for what never happened. He's just saying it in many different ways. But he's saying this perception of linear time is where the guilt comes in. And then you look at the body and you look at the wrongdoings and then you think, oh, how will I ever know heaven with all the mistakes I've made? And Jesus is like, well, You just had one mistake, and it was an identity mistake. That's what needs to be corrected. And he's saying it's done. It's been done. It's finished. That's what a savior is. A savior is simply a reminder that you're innocent, and you always have been innocent, and always will be. But you see the faith that it takes to accept that correction, that reality. And you do find a lot of the questions that you ask are just really just statements of the ego. They're not really real questions. That in the end, how can I apologize? Without inducing guilt. That's still just a cover over. Oh yeah, wait a minute. My job is to forgive. That's my one goal. Forgive. As Jesus says, prepare ye now for the undoing of what never was. Okay. Infinite patience induces immediate results. Okay. Those are those lines. Is this like a koan or riddle? No, it's not. Okay. Well, my watch is off. Okay. That's good. Andy was going to take my watch. Well, that's good. That was a nice time together. Celebration. Welcome. Yeah. Well, we talked about this session tonight, and then we'll see tomorrow. It's supposed to be a nice sunny day too, so. What is tomorrow, Friday? Yeah. 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 That's reminding me. I like to go immerse into the movie. God's Not Dead Too. Yeah. So, and then we'll be lining up. Just send me those Christian movies. We're going digging into the treasure chest to find them. We saw one not too long ago too. Wasn't it called Unlikely Angel or something like?
Yeah,
something like that. An unlikely angel. A workaholic woman goes into a coma
after she gives birth.
after she gives birth.
No, actually we find out it was beforehand.
Yeah. And then wakes up 7 years later.
And her daughter is born and she missed out. It was 6 years.
Yeah. The angel shows up that's trying to pull her out of the self-concept, and then all she knows is work, 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 and then she comes back and she has a 7-year-old daughter, and her husband has
Moved out to the country.
moved out to the
lived with her dad.
yeah, yeah. It's a
Paper woman that was kind of.
yeah. Time and space get majorly rearranged, and that's her brings her lots of healing lessons. Yeah,
And then she wakes up and she didn't miss out anything. Like glimpse. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, Family Man. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. That's like the angel appearing. Nicolas Cage tells the angel, "My life is actually perfect," and the angel, Don Cheadle's like, "Oh, I'm gonna like this so much." The angel's just like, "Oh," when he says, "My life is actually perfect." The angel's like, "Hmm." But we do like those movies. That's another one. That's a newer one we found on Pure Pureflix. Yeah, yeah. Unlikely Angel. But those are great movies because they really help us get the lesson. You know, that we think we know what's best, and then we need a contrast experience to show us that we don't know what's best. Okay, well, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you.